Welcome to Making It with Terry Wollman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Wollman.
Welcome to Making It. I'm Terry Wollman, and we're so happy to see you today. This show is about creating a successful life and what that means to my guest today, director Denny Tedesco. I'd like to share my intention that inspires this podcast. Time passes quickly, and I've learned that we should do what's in our hearts and do it well without apologies or excuses. I encourage you to create your life and art in your own unique way and express your artistry with joy and with abandon. Be willing to work uncompromisingly for what you believe in. Success will have a better chance of finding you when you live your life with integrity, focus, and passion. Be selfish with your discipline and selfless in your performance. And don't forget to have fun along the way. Denny Tedesco grew up in Los Angeles and graduated from Loyola Marymount University. He began his film career as a set director on the film Eating Raoul and has traveled the world as a lighting technician and location producer for IMAX films. From the shark-infested waters of Australia to the plains of Africa, he has filmed under the most challenging conditions. Denny directed and produced the award-winning documentary The Wrecking Crew, a film about the great session musicians in Los Angeles who worked with everyone from the Beach Boys and Elvis to Sinatra and the Monkees. Over the last 20 years, he has produced promos, videos, and commercials for various companies and networks. Most notably, in 2000, he produced the Academy Awards opening, starring Billy Crystal, and also the music video for Elton John's song, I Want Love, directed by artist Sam Taylor Wood and starring Robert Downey Jr. Denny's latest documentary, Immediate Family, is the perfect follow-up for this director. When the Wrecking Crew slowed down in the early 60s, the studio scene changed, and the era of singer-songwriters took over, supported by a new group of studio musicians. The film features Leland Sklar, Russ Kunkel, Waddy Wachtel, Danny Kootch Kortchmar, Steve Postell, and artists Carole King, Jackson Browne, James Taylor, Linda Ronstadt, Neil Young, Don Henley, David Crosby, Keith Richards, Phil Collins, Lyle Lovett, Stevie Nicks, and many more. So, welcome to the show, Denny Tedesco. Great to see you.
Nice to see you.
This is, I've been a fan of your work for a long time, and we first met very briefly at a screening of The Wrecking Crew before it was released. It was at the theater on Fairfax Boulevard.
Oh, yeah. That was the one with Allison Andrews did.
Yes, yeah.
That's right. It was rock. It was like she had a festival called, I want to say rock and roll, movies with rock and roll.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. And it was fantastic because the movie, you hadn't even, I remember you got up and spoke afterwards for a little bit. And one of the things, the audience was wondering when the movie was going to be out. And you were wondering how you were going to get all the music licensing, completed to be able to even afford or legally be able to release the movie because it's a music-centric film. You can't have a movie like that without showing footage and audio recordings of the magic that was created by all of these musicians, including your dad, the great Tommy Tedesco guitarist who influenced me and so many other studio musicians.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think that must have been around 2008. And for those who don't remember, I started the film in 96.
Yeah.
When Dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I quickly jumped into making the film. And he passed away in 97. In 98, I started shopping 10 minutes, a 10-minute teaser reel. And people would say, oh, this is great, but you'll never get it made. And they would say, that because there's so much music, there's 110 songs in the final cut. And every song has to be licensed. And at the time, they said, you're never going to get Spectre people to agree to be with, the Beach Boy. And they would there was always negative. And at that point, I had to keep going and just kept going. So I never stopped. And then we got into 2006 and Susie, my wife, had basically was like, we just created the most expensive home movie ever.
That's true.
It's like I always describe it as, it's like having owning a property overlooking Malibu, but all you got is the land. And, until you build the house, you have the appliances, you got the plans, but until you build it, you can't sell it and show it. And that's when we decided to go into, cutting the film. And we finally cut it in a year with Claire Scanlon, our producer and editor at the time. And we got it out in 2008. And that's when but it was 2008. And if everybody remembers, the economy dropped again. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, great. And no one ever wanted to talk about docs, music, especially music docs that had maybe over $500,000 worth of pickup fees before we could even sell it.
Which is extremely expensive, even for in the film business.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's funny. There was an article. I'm very proud of this article. It was in Variety magazine, or in 2009. Mm-hmm. And it was so negative. It was talking about how music docs were struggling to find homes, and they talked about Martin Scorsese with his music doc of the Stones, and Demi with his music doc. I think it was Neil Young. And then they mentioned my name. I went, awesome! I'm on a page of losers. Like, at least I'm not struggling alone. My only dream is wondering, do you think Marty? I like to say Marty. Do you think Marty maybe saw my name and said the same thing?
Right.
Doubt it.
Was that you mentioned that in 1996 when you started this, when is your dad's last year? When he was diagnosed.
Yeah.
Was that, I know it must have been a really hard time for your family, but was that a hard ask, or was that something that your dad brought him joy and connected the two of you?
Really good question. I'm a little confused on my timing at that point, which is really weird because it's so long ago. I remember wanting to do it. I always remember when it wasn't just because, he's passing away.
Right.
It was something I wanted to do. And there was a point where I wanted to show, come up with a reason to show radio and radio turns. And that was going to be my thing, to sell the film, which never was. But I realized, I think having him where he was, when you diagnosed with terminal cancer, they don't usually say terminal too often.
Right.
They always give you some kind of hope. Mm-hmm. I think that was it. I think that it was not a hard ask. He was into it. He was the one that said, and I said, who do we put at the round table? He said, put Hal Blaine, Earl Palmer. Earl got sick. And he said, put Blaz and Carole King on the round table. Because I always wanted to do that round table. That was our first day of shooting. And the round table was basically came out of watching Broadway Danny Rose, which is Woody Allen's film. Mm-hmm. And it was one of my favorite films, as well as Diner of Barry Levinson's Diner. And what I love about those films are conversations that the actors have. They're stepping on each other's lines. Mm-hmm. And that's how I always remembered my father. I never saw my father play music. I was, at home, and we never went to work with Dad. So if he was home, he was never playing music. It was the last thing he ever did was pick up a guitar. But, they'd be playing cards, or they'd be having dinners, or they'd be having, whatever. And it was always banter, musicians banter. Mm-hmm. And I always,
with a lot of humor injected into that.
I mean, I always say, it's funny because I working the other day, I was with the band on this thing I'm producing, a comedy thing. I said, comedians want to be musicians and musicians want to be comedians. There's this kind of like, they laugh over each other. But they do. I mean, the greatest thing about musicians, they listen. Their whole world is about listening.
Right.
So when they're talking to each other, they're ready to get another zinger in there sometime. They're trying to get one in. So that's how that started.
Speaking of that, with musicians wanting to be comedians wanting to be musicians, how did you, growing up in such a musical family in the epicenter of pop music in Los Angeles, but not just in Los Angeles, but with your dad being exposed to the community, the musicians, how did you not end up becoming a professional musician? Was that
Well,
something you thought of?
all the time, but
Yeah.
I heard you have to practice.
Yes, you do.
So I don't know why it didn't work out for me.
I see. Okay.
And maybe Terry, I could come over and maybe you could give me the third chord and we'll try to see. There was a good
We can do that.
NAMM show. I always told someone there's the NAMM show, which is, for those who don't know, it's like the biggest music show for products
From manufacturers, yeah.
manufacturers come from around the world. And at the basement, they always have the basement has the lowest end of the products. Sometimes it's just the wood and then
Or the coolest.
What's that?
Or the coolest.
Or the coolest.
Yeah, some great instrument builders.
One guy had a booth and it said, learn guitar in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I turned to someone, I said, I could put that guy out of business in 10. I just suck. People assume it's because my dad was a great guitarist. No. It was, he never forced us. It was never going to be one of those, you guys are going to learn piano. We took instruments. I could have been a one-man band by now.
Yeah.
But again, you got to practice.
And your siblings? You have how many?
My older brother was a music publisher, and he started in the business with Snuff Garrett, Dale Tedesco. Mm-hmm. And then my younger brother, who's still in the business, Damon Tedesco, he's a music engineer. So he works with Walter Murphy and mixes and mixes and records Family Guy and a lot of movies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I actually years ago did at least one or two sessions with Damon, with your brother. I remember.
Oh wow!
Probably back in.
I'm very proud of Damon. He's he's one of the funniest people I know as well. Mm-hmm. But I'm very proud of my little brother.
I would imagine that your brothers are proud of you as well for the I think, important work that you've been doing.
Yeah, I think we're just proud of each other. We're supportive of each other. We've always been supportive as a family. Mm-hmm. Always, it's funny. It's growing up. It was always, always wondering what each other's doing and how you can help. And people always say, it was just the way it was. There was, we had a lot of fighting in the family.
Sure. Well, three brothers. I have three brothers. I'm in the middle as well.
And, the parents, they would go at it and we're an Italian family. Mm-hmm. But, if we had a big fight with my father or something, we'd scream and shout and everything else. But before I left, he said, come on, give me a kiss goodbye. We always had to kiss each other goodbye, which was, meant a lot.
Yeah.
You let it go. So,
yeah, boy, that sounds like one of the most beautiful lessons he might have left you of many.
Yeah. I mean, there's moments where, it's hard to let go, but you have to learn to let go.
Yeah. And you also being a father, I would imagine that your mom and dad's, all of the things that worked and all of the things that maybe didn't work as well, you've incorporated or adjusted.
Absolutely.
Into your parenting.
Yeah, it's funny because there's those moments where you feel less of a parent because you can't do something that your parents gave to you or did for you. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, or you go, oh God, I'm being my parent. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I think that's all of us.
I want to read a quote, two quotes actually, that oftentimes I'll start the show with, but we just jumped into the conversation, which I'm totally enjoying. But these are both things that you have said, and I'm paraphrasing a little, making it a little bit shorter. The first is, throughout my career, I've been dedicated to envisioning the genesis of creative ideas and managing conceptual projects successfully from beginning to end. But the truth is, I just want to do a great job, have fun doing it. It may be cliche by saying life is too short, but it's true.
I said that. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. I saw it in some review of one of your movies or LinkedIn or someplace.
Yeah.
Is that, I lost my dad when I was 17.
Very young.
Yeah, it was young and deeply stunned me and impacted me.
Sure.
But it also provided me with that same perspective on life. Life is short. So, for me, it's like, that's why I don't waste moments. That's why that my life is filled with gratitude, because I know how quickly things can change in a blink of an eye. Did you feel that way before both your parents? Is your mom still around? I
My
don't know.
mom passed away just the day before Trump came in,
Oh,
which I think she was quite happy to go.
yeah.
So what can I say?
So she was spared from having to see that.
Yeah, that was her dying wishes, dude. Get me out. It's funny because here's the thing is I never knew what my career was going to be. In high school, I'm class of '79, so I don't remember much. Why did I go into filmmaking? I don't even remember, other than I was doing a commercial. I did a commercial as an actor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, to go back to what you were talking about, being a musician. I watched all of you guys, every one of you musicians, succeed, or whatever you want to say success is, but it wasn't. You worked at your craft, and I wanted to write, and I went to college to write. I didn't write. I'm not a writer. A writer writes every day. A musician plays every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, I was doing all those things in film and stuff, but it wasn't something I loved to do.
Right.
I love traveling and love being a filmmaker on IMAX films, but there was something more I was missing. And I didn't want, when I started the Wrecking Crew, I didn't want, people say, oh, you should have given up a long time ago. I should have. It would have saved me a lot of money at that point. But
Right.
I didn't want that to be my legacy, as quitting.
Right.
It was that feeling of, I quit, guitar, I quit piano, I quit saxophone. It wasn't writing. I didn't have that discipline that an artist has to have.
Mm-hmm.
So that became I was able to find the discipline to not give up on that film.
That's powerful. And you know something? I remember that fight within you, when I saw you speak. And again, we didn't know each other. I was just in the audience.
Wow.
I probably went up and said hi, afterwards, and I did. But the thing is, I remember, like, your determination was really focused and strong. I never doubted. I knew what you were going through with having to secure the licenses and raise the money. And you had talked a little bit about that. And also I have an understanding of the music business because I'm in it. I'm a part of it. But I still really felt that fire in your belly. I didn't see you giving up on this movie.
Well, it's funny because a friend of mine, Ali Salim, another director, who is one of the great directors for me, and he had this film called, I can't remember, it went blank, but Ali had done 15 years on his film before he got it out.
Long time.
And I remember he said, John Sayles had a line that John Sayles, the director, said, when you cross a line, you can't turn back. And I had crossed that line once I got into the festivals. All right, now I have all these awards at festivals, 2008 and 9. I have a dozen awards, amazing reviews, sellout crowds, but I'm also $100,000 in debt, $150,000 in debt, and it's getting bigger.
Right.
And it was like, what do? I can't stop now.
Right, because film festivals are not cheap to participate in. There's travel, there are all kinds of things involved.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Terry. What was that?
It's okay. I was saying, I know because I know other documentary makers who have been involved in film festivals. That is not an inexpensive endeavor. There's a lot of expenses just to submit, to travel, to even get in the festivals.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I had worked on that film at that point for, almost 20 years by the time we released it.
It's incredible.
I was shooting film at the time. I did this, then we did video. It wasn't until 2010 when everybody all the festivals were done, and I had no other choice to figure out what. No one's picking us up at that point
because of the music licensing
Yeah, I mean,
expense.
yeah, and it wasn't to be honest with you, it wasn't the labels or the publishers that were the problem. It was economics.
Hmm.
I always say, how do I find an investor to give this much when it's only going to make this much? That was their theory.
Right.
Because it's a music doc, and it wasn't. The publishers and the labels were not the problem.
Hmm.
So I had to figure out how am I going to raise this money, and it went to was trying to find, I went to Fender and try to get money out of them. Hey, instead of putting an ad, or it's just an ad space, put it on the DVD, and they would say no. And then this went on forever, and then someone said, "Why'd you dedicate a song, do a dedication chapter?" So what do you mean? He goes, Up and Away, when I was a kid, he said, I had an AM radio, 2 stations were playing the same song. He goes, I noticed the difference. He goes, that's how I got into radio technology. He goes, I'll give you $1,000 right now for Up and Away. You put it on the DVD, you put my name under the song called Dedicated by Greg, and that's what I did. That was the start.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point on, from 2010 to 14, I was nonstop. Any money I could raise, it was like barnstorming across the country.
Mm-hmm.
You had a connection in Athens, Georgia, or somewhere I'd go and I'd sell merch. I'd find sponsorships. There were people, I would go to local, like car dealerships. Hey, I'll give you 10 tickets if you just give me $250, give it to you. I'd go to dog groomers. I had restaurants. I go to real estate or estate planners, and I put their name up on the screen before the start, and we would do this. And all the money, sometimes it'd be only $500. Sometimes I'd lose on a trip. That was the worst, losing on a trip. And then coming back, and I'd pay off a label, pay off a publisher. And, it just kept going until I could pay off $500,000. It was... but I was not giving up. I couldn't. I'm not a hero. I just had no choice. I'd still be doing it.
That's true.
And my friends and family, don't forget, you can imagine. It's like you doing an album or talking about a script that you're doing, and everybody, oh yeah, how's it going, Terry? Nice script. You're doing Wrecking Crew. Oh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
But no one ever knowing that at nighttime I would go 50-50 rule, which wasn't really, but I would look at a place I'm playing in Wichita, and I would try to find within 50 miles stores, music shops, schools, and I would hit them up with posters and postcards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I, got people there. And I never stopped. And but I know my family and friends really seriously. I think they wanted me committed at some point. So.
Well, understandably, there are moments of like that in my family where people, wonder if there should be an intervention for putting out another album or every time.
You have to do it. I mean, it makes you happy.
That's right.
You the musicians, you guys have some outlet. You play your instruments. It makes you happy.
It does. Yeah. And on the opposite side, and I would think this speaks to you as well, when you don't play your instrument, when you don't make your films, then you are unhappy.
Yeah.
It takes joy, it brings joy, but it also takes joy away when you're not able to continue doing it.
Yeah. No, I'm very lucky. I've had success with the film. I mean, Wrecking Crew brought me so much joy that I still blown away by it. It's not because I made a great film. It's those musicians. It's that music, and my, editor and, how it came together. It turned into a really...
Right. The making of the film is a story in itself.
And and it has legs, and it blows my mind that people are still affected by it. But The reason it's affecting people, and this is all by accident. It wasn't because we planned it this way. When we started cutting the film, I had 20 minutes cut with Claire, and a friend of ours, Grady Cooper, who was another director editor, he said, "Why are you guys cutting it like this?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're cutting a story about the Wrecking Crew, but you're not involving Denny Tedesco in this."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, I didn't want to be involved in it because my ego was stronger than that. And my ego was saying, don't become involved, because as soon as I became involved in the storyline, I am no longer a director. I'm the son of the guitar player."
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to make that change in my life at that point. I really was over. I didn't want to be, I wanted something creative on my side. But we played with it. And as soon as I started going down that road involving the storyline that way, it helped. It helped it tremendously. So
Right.
that storyline of a father passing away, everybody in the world will have a father that passes away.
Right. There's the heart. There's the humanity.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think was understanding about musicians, their legacies or where they're at in their careers. One of the great lines I always, Bones Howe, I said to Bones, I said, "What is it like when you're at the top of your career? You guys are the A-team. He's producing the, Fifth Dimension and all this other, and everybody else." And he goes, "It's not about staying at the top." He goes, "You got your ramp up like the minor leagues and you're at the majors, and then you got the ramp down." He goes, "It's not about staying at the top. It's about taking the ramp down as long as possible." And that is every one of us. It doesn't matter if you're a postman or a mother. You just want to be relevant. And we all want to be relevant. You don't have to be, and I realized that how important that line was. The other important line that I feel is one of the most important lines came from Plaz Johnson. I know how my family, we grew up. Dad was never around, but it never felt like Dad was never around. It wasn't like we were, oh my God, we were latchkey kids. But when I asked Plaz, I said, "How did it affect your personal lives?" Now, for Hal Blaine, he had 5 marriages, but Plaz said, and he paused, he goes, "Let's just say I'm a better grandfather than I am a father."
Yeah, beautiful line in the movie.
And he said when he was doing the Merv Griffin show in those days, he would go to work at 3:00. Kids weren't home yet. He'd come home, the kids were in bed. They go to school, he's not up yet. So there were, weeks he didn't see the kids until the weekends. And for me, that was really hard making the Wrecking Crew, because that effort I put into the film took over. It was, like I said, I should have been committed, but I was committed in a different way. I just needed it done. I needed to get it behind me. I needed to be successful for my children.
Right.
I didn't want that over them, so.
Absolutely.
And I have to balance, and I balance. That is the thing, is balancing family in your career, and everybody does that.
Well, that's not an easy feat.
No.
In most people's lives, not just artistic lives, but just in general. Yeah.
I mean, I always dreamed of having a job that I say I dream of it, but going in, and I've never had one though, by the way. I've never had a job. I just realized that. Yeah, I've never really actually had a job where I had
a job.
Jeez. The last job I think had a time card was I was a waiter 40 years ago. But the idea of going to work and coming home and leaving your work behind you, that never, as a freelancer, all of us know that never happens.
Yeah. So. The second quote of yours that I really like is, it's your motto, or you say my other motto is, if the door is closed, go through the window.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it speaks to not just the way that you are explaining, how your process, and how you, in your perspective, but also it speaks to your history. Like, with me looking at your your credits. I see there's an early, I believe one of your first major credits was on Eating Raoul in 1982 as a set dresser.
Yeah.
Then that same year, you also were on the construction crew of the Beastmaster.
Right.
1987.
It blows my mind that I'm even have a credit in that. I don't think I've ever seen that.
In 1987, on the movie Made to Order, you have an electrician credit.
Yeah.
So you clearly
didn't know what I was going to do.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. You don't have a clue what you're going to do. But really what I see is the essence of you having the tenacity and the willingness to do whatever it takes to get to the next step of what interests you.
Well, that's really interesting. All right. So that's really, no one's ever brought that up. It's funny that you say that because that's one of those things. People say, do you have any regrets? So the Eating Raoul job came up for those that it's not a porno for those who don't know.
Oh, it's a great movie.
Yeah. I was actually on a student film, and the art director saw me. He thought I was really intense, and this was in college. He recommended me because I was really focused, and the truth was I was stoned. We were smoking pot, which is not something you should do on set in college many years ago. But he recommended me to this film as a set dresser. And I remember going in for the interview, and the woman's, Ann Kimmel was the producer. She goes, "So have you had any experience?" I said, "Yeah."
Yes, I have.
Yes, I have. And
lies.
Before I went in there, I actually called another friend of mine who's now an Academy nominee. She's a costume designer, Sharon Davis. I always remember calling Sharon and said, because we were just kids working at Universal Amphitheater, serving beer.
Right.
I mean, that's our job. I said, "Hey, what's a set dresser do?" She goes, "You put things on the set." I said, "Okay, I got that.
I can do that."
Go in for the interview, bullshit my way through. I was the luckiest guy in the world to know that the art director and the prop master covered my ass, because I shouldn't have had that job. But long story short, I took it because I knew it was a break into the business. Then I went into film, went into gripping and lighting because rock and roll videos were happening. And I did that for a few years. But, I wish I would have been more focused in terms of production. I wish I would have, again, if I wanted to be in producing or production, that's where I should have gone. I should have asked, and those few people I knew, I should have not been embarrassed to say, "Hey, can I get some help trying to get a job in your company?" You know what I mean? I should have been a little ballsier. I was too embarrassed. Not embarrassed. I didn't.
Shy?
Maybe not comfortable enough, not feeling I had it. Not feeling like not worthy. It sounds really awful, but I just feel it's just never feeling like, hey, I'm not that good. So I kind of wung it. As I just kept going and going, and then got into the IMAX films, which was great because I got to travel. And why I liked IMAX films were because it was just 4 of us. So it's just camera, myself, an assistant, and maybe the director. Sometimes the director wasn't there. It was just the 3 of us. And we'd be, when you're 33% of the crew, you have something to say. Versus being, a crew of 100, and you're just tossing a sandbag. So I got to just start thinking differently when you're that way. But I think that's also why it took so long with the Wrecking Crew. I didn't have the balls enough to make that call to Brian Wilson's people. I didn't know how to get in there. I didn't know, well, what if he turns me down? So what? He turns you down. Try again and again later.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that was the thing I blew. Maybe I could have done it, but I don't regret that. I learned. But you know what I mean? I think you just got to keep going without being an asshole, being persistent, but being, cool about it.
Although I'm sure you've seen as many examples of this as I have. There are a lot of assholes who seem to actually move to the front of the line.
Oh, they're really good at it.
It always astounds me, and I even see it sometimes as being mistaken as confidence when they're just being jerks.
Yeah. I think it's funny because we were talking about this the other day. With the Me Too movement and all these other movements were really amazing because there's a lot of those people, the Weinsteins. There's people that are absolutely horrible people on sets, directors, DPs, that they don't get away with it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they don't get away with it anymore. Less and less, because
Right.
you can't act that way with people. And I'm not talking about being really sensitive. I'm talking about being total jerks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like there was, this story of Joe Pica, one of the great, it's not like I'm talking out of turn. I've always wanted to work with the guy just to be able to say I work with the guy. He was notorious for being a horrific person on set. And I always said if you took 50% or 10% of his stuff and said it was true, it's horrific.
Mm-hmm.
But how do people get away with it? Because people let it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I think I don't have the patience my father had. My father was an amazing, he could read people like no one, but he had talent to back it up.
Yeah.
I mean, he could, and he was the sharpest wit in the room. So if you messed with him, he's going to come back with you and you won't even know it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was, he'd just bury the person. And he had no patience when the guys would talk down on musicians. And we found a beautiful letter when he passed away. And I had known about it. He had done the Placido Domingo album.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all Spanish. It was Alex Cunha and Dad and, doing his, Latin licks.
Mm-hmm.
And Placido it was all a Spanish album. And the producer was a total jerk off. And I don't remember who it was, but he was just going nuts on the musicians. And during the break, my father pulled him aside and said, "You continue this shit, I'm going to walk. You don't talk to these guys like that." And they straightened him up. And the guy, stopped.
That's powerful.
It was very powerful.
To have the credibility and also just the nerve to do that.
But he could do it. He could do it.
That's right. He earned that position.
Right. And he always said to the kids, in those seminars, he goes, and us too. He goes, "Listen, you could be 110% right, and you could blow off a leader, but don't expect to come back. It's okay if you want to you really put them in their place, but don't expect to come back." And when he did it, he was at that point and the letter I was going to mention was this drummer. It wasn't Alex Acuna, it was somebody else. And he said, "Thank you for doing that, because we're not in a position to be able to pull that off or do that." And he did that a lot, sometimes too much. Sometimes he might, react like, "I think you're being a little more sensitive," but it says more about him as a person. It's not about his playing. I think that's what I learned more is what a human being he was. And that to me was the biggest thrill in making this film.
Where can people see the movie?
Well, Wrecking Crew can be seen on Hulu, Amazon Prime. It's on YouTube, I think, with commercials. It's funny because now with the new film coming out, Immediate Family, a couple theaters have started playing. Before a festival, we've had they've played Wrecking Crew like a couple weeks before.
Oh,
and their audience
to set it up.
Yeah.
Well, it's great because there's a deep connection and beautiful transition from one to the next. Not just in your story of making them, but it's the continuing story of the legacy of the superstar studio musicians, and superstar meaning great people, like good people that you want to be around with deep integrity and focus and commitment and natural talent and family, this sense of family. Right before We get too deep into immediate family movie, which is what I want to speak about next. Let's talk about something else that's deeply influenced you just as a human being, and also your daughter as well. Can you just share a little bit of your story about your experience with ADHD?
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
That was also one of the hardest things during the making of the Wrecking Crew. It took so long. Part of it was we had lost my father, obviously, and it took a while to get going again.
Yeah.
But then I had children, and my daughter was a twin, and Isabella and her brother Tommy were born, and they were born preemies. Unfortunately, Tommy passed. He passed after 6 months. He ran into problems, obviously.
So sorry.
Yeah, and Isabella, she was a fighter, and she was in the first 2 years amazing, and then all of a sudden, the third year, things started going. What's going on? And doctor would say, well, you should read this book about the defiant child. Okay, read the book. Well, it's more than defiant. This is something else. And we kept going, and realized by the time she was in, she was always having issues at school. Basically, she just was in people's, not in faces. She just didn't understand. She didn't understand. I mean, she can't read a room. Couldn't read a room, but she'd be in people's area, space. And so then we took her to another school, and I thought, oh, maybe a new school going into kindergarten would be a nice change. And well, after 2 weeks, I got that call from the school, said, hey, we got to talk about this.
Yeah, same story.
She was diagnosed as being on the spectrum. And I know his kid that she has every letter at the end of her name, ADD, ADHD, opposition, ODD. I said everything but MD. But when I was taking those tests for her, meaning like you write out those tests and you go, does she do this? Does she do that? Does she do this? This is for ADHD or ADD. And I went, yeah. And I go, wait a minute, that's me. And I was like, that's that. I realized at that point in my life, it's probably about mid-40s.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're already in your 40s.
Yeah. So in my mid-40s, go, that is why I have these issues of this anxiety. And it was because I realized I was ADD or whatever you want to call it. And because I realized that's one of the reasons why for me, I guess everybody listens. Some brilliant musicians are the greatest, are on the spectrum. And, it didn't work in my favor. It just so me concentrating on just that chord didn't work. Some others, it works great. But, I realized it was difficult. And that was the fear of technology, I think, was also the thing that I wish I would have concentrated on earlier, but I realized why I couldn't. A lot of times it just doesn't sink in.
Right.
So now after all those years, I was on medication, and that helped out tremendously. But I learned a lot from that.
And you still use the medication to...
Yeah. I know when it doesn't work for me. I mean, if I don't take it, around midday, I go, what am I doing? Where am I? Oh, well, that's usually every day.
Right. But you are less focused without the medication.
Less focused. Yeah. And it was really, and being a producer, when I was making that change from gripping and lighting to producing, I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm insecure about the change of my job. Because my friends, when we were on the road, I had this, they made up a disease for me. And they said, you have EDS. And it was called early death syndrome. So we'd be in a van somewhere deep in Africa, and I'd be looking for things that were going to kill me. And I was always anxiety filled. And it was just because I had no control. That frontal lobe wasn't, connecting. So there's nothing worse, and everybody knows this, is when you're just scrambling, you can't figure out where you're at, where, what is next on the list,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that changed my life.
And it's also enabled you, it's given you a really deeper insight into your daughter's challenges, who
Absolutely.
is a grown woman, fully functioning.
Yeah,
And
she's still, God bless her, still, going to school, still,
wow.
where she works as a nanny, fabulous. She loves kids. She wants to be in childcare, and
Mhm.
she doesn't give up, and that, which is great,
Yeah.
I hope she just keeps going.
Well, that's a great quality that she's gotten from her dad, from
I
you,
hope so. Yeah.
the not give up.
Yeah.
Is your wife the same way? Is she like tenacious? And
It's funny because Susie is, in so many ways, Susie makes commercials.
Mhm.
It's so funny because my son, a few years ago, when he was early in, junior high or early high school, someone said, "What do you want to do?" I want to do what my mom does. And at first I said, "Well, fuck you. I do the same
Right.
thing."
Wow, that hurt.
Mom makes all
Right.
the money just because mom's more successful at it. I look at Susie, she makes commercials, but I mean, she makes, multi high-end commercials.
Mhm.
She's, working with, major products. And I can't even tell you the product she's working on now because it's top secret.
Right.
But I hear her these conversations, and she's multitasking. And I hear these things go, oh my God, I get nervous hearing them. And it's not even my job.
Right. Yeah.
I realized, so that's why my friends, when I do my jobs, they call me the Denny Specials. And I'm proud of the Denny Specials. I got a crew of 25, maybe
Mhm.
30, maybe, or down to 2. And it's 2 of us. And I love that because I have control over it,
Yeah.
So I really, so it's funny. Her mind works in a totally different way.
Mhm.
She does. So,
Thanks for talking about that.
yeah.
I find it really insightful and interesting. Just have the opportunity to speak about that challenge and how you have not just overcome it, but just not, I suppose, embraced it or just learned to move forward, because we all have disabilities
Yeah.
and we all have abilities. We have strengths and things we need to work on.
Yeah, and I'm not. The thing is, as I get older now, things are changing again.
Sure. Yeah.
62, and it's like, oh God, am I just seriously losing it?
Yeah. Brace yourself.
It's like, it's one thing to physically feel like this, but
Mhm.
it's like, oh, why did it come downstairs again? It has nothing to do with medication anymore.
Right. That's welcome to your 60s.
Yeah. So um, but I'm enjoying it. I mean, I do enjoy. I think the best thing for me is when I'm working is I love people. I
Mhm.
seriously love working with, unless they're jerks. Then we all look up, forget this. I just love what I do.
Yeah.
When I'm doing those things.
Exactly. Let's talk about your new film,
Yeah.
Immediate Family. How would you describe it? I know how other people describe it, and I'm so excited and glad that you've made this movie as well.
Oh, well, I'm very lucky. I mean, what happened was, after Wrecking Crew came out, extremely successful, very, well received, favorite of musicians, this and that. But I was also shell shocked,
Mhm.
and truth is, we went bankrupt, because of that. So we recovered. But I say that because then I had the opportunity in 2019. 3 producers came to me: Jack Pyatt, Greg Rishling, and Jonathan Sheldon came to me. They said, "Listen, there's this opportunity to do something with the guys that were part of the section,
Mhm.
and they have a band called Immediate Family, and it's Leland Sklar, Russ Kunkel, Waddy Wachtel, and Danny Kootch Kortchmar. And
Mhm.
the new guitar player they call him the Kid, who's 65, Steve Postell.
Right.
They have this band called Immediate Family." I said, now that I have a grasp on. I said 2 reasons. I said, Immediate Family. I said, to go back to the Wrecking Crew. I said, when we had I didn't mention this earlier, but we had an issue with Wrecking Crew at the beginning. We were getting these notes, and one came. We didn't get into Sundance, but the guy said we didn't pick it because of this problem. And he said we weren't sure if it's the story of your father or the Wrecking Crew. And it was really interesting. And a friend of mine said, "Why don't you just say it's this? This is the story of my father and his extended family, the Wrecking Crew." Never got the note again. So it was it was a family. Dad was part of an extended family. They spent more time with each other at work than at home. So this made sense, immediate family, which is basically based on Danny Kootch Kortchmar. When he was offered a gig, and he said, "Well, I'll only do it if my guys are with me and my buddies." And he said they will call it immediate family because that's what they are.
Right.
They've been there on and off for 50 years. No matter in the studios or on the road, that's what they do.
And for people who don't know the section, these wonderful musicians, anybody would know them from James Taylor, Carole King, and Jackson Browne because they were in all three of those bands, not just live, but in the making of the records, and then they would go tour the records. And quite frankly, those were the guys who made me want to move to California and tour and do sessions. That I thought they were the best of the best. Doing both.
And that was the difference. That's the huge difference between the two time periods. My father would never go on the road.
Right.
For many reasons. One, there was no money involved.
Yeah.
You had a backup band and that was it. Those guys on the road did probably make $200 a week or whatever. And so you never left. And the other chance you leaving, that meant someone's going to take your seat.
Right. Next in line. Yeah, you lose your place.
There's a lot of guitar players who are fine with taking someone's seat. And so they never did it. There was a different, and also those guys, Dad went to work, did recording sessions in 3 hours. You got 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours. That's what your AFM, the musicians union, would book you. Well, you could do a double session, 6 hours, whatever. But that's how fast things were going. So that you could do a record in 1, 2, 3 days. And when the 70s come around, singer-songwriters are having a little more say in what they want to do.
Right.
So when at the end of the Wrecking Crew, I asked Lou Adler, I said, "Hey, did you make a change, conscious decision to not use these guys anymore when you did Tapestry?" He said, "Absolutely not." He goes, "No, Carole King brought her own people, and she brought in James Taylor and Kootch." And so it was like, oh my God, this is the perfect opportunity, immediate family, to jump off into. So, and the idea that these guys come, so check this out. Russ Kunkel's one of 3 albums that he did in 1971, Sweet Baby James, Tapestry, and Joni Mitchell's Blue.
Right.
I mean, you could quit at that point, and Leland starts, he leaves CSUN, the Northridge College. He's in the science department.
Right. Yeah.
They have him in a band. They find him in a band. And would you like to go out on James Taylor for a month? Sure. He never goes back to school. And it just goes from there.
Yeah.
So these guys are basically really young and they have that drive to do it. And they're not tied down to the studios at this point either. So, you know what I mean? They're not like so busy like my father is or Howard.
Right.
Or any of those guys. They'll take a chance and go on the road. And that changes music because, like you said, they support the album. Albums are the tours. LPs are huge now. Now they're showing the names of these guys. You see these names and they all seem funny when you look at them on paper. Leland Sklar, Russ Kunkel. And it's like, oh, he's the drummer. Sounds like a drummer. Kootch. And what is that? And then Waddy Wachtel, so these names stick and then you see them in concert. So now they become personalities.
Yeah.
So we started that. The producers came to me, band said, absolutely love to do it. And the next day, I always remember, I think the next day I got a call from the guys and they said, Carole King said she could be here in 3 weeks. She's going to be in town. Let's do the interview then. I went, oh shit. I don't know if do I really have this story down? I mean, I don't know the story. I'm kind of bullshitting my way through it, but I have an overview.
Right.
Now,
But it's also not your job to know the story. It's your job to shine the light on the story.
well, yeah, and that's a kind of a cool thing. Also,
Yeah.
it works sometimes in your benefit of not knowing a lot, but also you just look like a total ass when you say something.
Both are true, right?
Yeah, I always remember saying something to Herb Alpert. He goes, "That's bullshit." I just saw it on the internet. It's bullshit. Okay, but it was like, so I quickly jumped into it, and there was never, someone recently said, well, you got a lot of those names because you're past, Wrecking Crew. I said, maybe, but not really. I mean, those people came to the table instantly because they loved those guys.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there was like Jackson, James, Carole, Linda, Phil Collins, Lou Adler. And it was like within 5 weeks in the can. And then we kept going and knocking it out. And then then COVID hit and everything stopped. And now we got, oh my God, I got a story about 5 guys all in their 60s and 70s, about the whole stories about these guys. And, the worst, you start thinking, these guys aren't even in the can. I'm scared for everybody.
Right. Yeah.
And we said, listen, let's go get the stories of the guys. And it was just Benjamin and Trey, the soundman, and myself, and we would go out and we just knock it off.
And during COVID, I know for a fact, because I'm friends with Steve and Leland, that and know the other guys to various degrees, but the bubble were them and their spouses or siblings, and you guys. They created a bubble, and that's the only people that they saw.
It was those guys. I tell you, I have so much admiration for. Again, this goes back to what I said about what I admire of all you musicians. Your tenacity to practice, the tenacity to do it. That never goes away. I watched my father too. He'd still pick up the guitar and do something. It never goes away. And to watch those guys, immediate family, at their own homes, writing music, and they would send it to Lee and send it to Russ, and they all get together, and they a cappella, whatever they did, and they music and recorded. It was fabulous, amazing.
Yeah.
These guys, listen, they don't have to do that. They're in their 70s. They could be sitting back, enjoying COVID, as the good old days. But then they come up with videos.
Right.
I mean, the videos were killer. The guy that put it together, they all did it. And it was like amazing.
Yeah. It really truly was. Yeah. I see that we've got people in our live studio. If anybody wants to jump in before we get to closing questions, now would be a good time. So just make a request. I'll bring you up on stage to say hi to Danny.
Wow.
Yeah. But I agree. And you and I were talking privately about my new record that just came out. And hey, Chris, we'll bring you up right now. But, Leland was available, to record on a song of mine as well.
Yeah.
And, and everything was done remotely, but the level of connectivity with the people who were really paying attention and doing it right was just fantastic. Chris, hi, welcome to the show.
Does Chris have his mic on? I see
Chris, are you there?
Oh, yes, sir. Sorry, I was making egg salad. Sorry.
Did you make some for everybody, Chris?
Yes. Can you share with the class?
Certainly. Oh, man. Great interview, great information. And now I'm going to watch a new film.
Cool.
I was watching, is it In the Shadows of Motown?
Yeah.
That other documentary that I love so much.
Yeah.
I watched that like 4 times. I made everybody I know come sit down and watch it with me again. And I love the backstory of these guys and girls, these folks, these people, these musicians that are unsung heroes. I mean, how many times did I read the back of my albums when I was a kid? Who's this Hadley Hawkinsmith? He's on everything, So I just basically came on stage to say thank you for making this. It's a service to the arts and to America, to history. And if that's enough platitudes, egg salad's on its way. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That's very kind of you.
I'll take that
By the way,
I'll take
Lisa,
that answer off camera. No. It's funny because he said "Standing in the Shadows," which is a fabulous film.
Yeah.
That came out, I think 2001, 2002, or around that time. It came out after I'd been in production for 5 years or something. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, I can't watch it. And I was so depressed. And my friend, we were doing Discovery, we were doing the IMAX films and stuff. And my friend at Discovery said, how many Lion films are there? He goes, there's always a different story. So I said, all right. And I'm glad I never looked at the other film because it's so well done and
it is
intimidating. There's also Muscle Shoals. So many good music docs out there.
But yours has been recognized as one of the top 50 music documentaries, I believe, and rightfully so. Lisa, I see you up on stage with us. You're welcome to unmute.
Hello.
Hi.
Good to be here. I want everybody to know there are 2 links in your little fortune cookie ticker tape. One of them is to Denny's website, and the other one is a link to the Amazon film. Can you guys not hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I thank you so much for doing that, Lisa.
The other one is, now you can see it on Netflix, and I think it's on Hulu.
I don't think it's on Netflix. If it is, boy.
It's for sale on Netflix.
Oh, is it?
Buy it. Yeah, it's for sale on Netflix. And
then go ahead, buy it.
I don't know why Brian Wilson's name comes up in the URL for Amazon, but I double checked and it is. So if you have Amazon Prime, folks, you can watch that tonight. Get your popcorn.
I'm very thank you, Lisa. It's funny because literally I get emails at least 2-3 times a week from people who've never seen it. Which is great because it means it's still. And there was a great article. Well, not a great article. It was an article last week in New York Times. Someone sent me, said 10 films that you should stream, and it was like, oh my God, I'm one of them, and it was so cool.
What's so funny is how shocked he is.
Because it took so long, and the fact that it's still doing. It still hits new people. And that's the great thing is.
Good. So the story is still good. I mean, anybody over 40 knows the musicians, and anybody into music knows the musicians that your dad and that group and the wrecking crew played with. So, but I have a question.
Good, because I was hoping you did, Lisa.
Yes, I have a question. I've buried both of my dads, so I know what that was like for me. But I also know that I've learned so much about them since they passed.
Yeah.
What is something you've learned about your dad?
That's really nice.
That you either didn't know or it's like you understand it from a different place now.
At least I was hit on a couple stories that people always wanted to tell me a story when I would interview them or run into them at a screening. They would always tell me, it went from one guy, he said he was in Hollywood, he had a guitar. It was pissing down rain, and a Rolls Royce pulls up. My dad had a Rolls Royce. It was his great claim to fame to have that at the end of his life. Couldn't sell the damn thing later, but that's beside the point. But he said, all of a sudden this guy pulls up in a Rolls Royce, and he goes, I look inside, he's your father. And he goes, I didn't know him, he didn't know me, but I knew who he was. He goes, come on, get in. And he picked him up out of the rain. And he took him to wherever he had to go. And he also, there was a Chuck Rainey, who's one of the great bass players of all time. And again, these are stories. Dad's not going to come home and tell you these stories. It's not, it doesn't work that way. And Chuck Rainey said, I'm new in town, but I'm hot. I'm the hot guy. I'm doing all the, Steely Dan albums. I'm out in New York, and I'm doing a MASH with Benny Golson is the conductor, and he hires me to do MASH episode. And I go in there, 20th Century Fox, and all the musicians are there. And I don't know your dad, but we're doing the music. It starts, and he goes, there's this odd time configuration or something, and I lose myself in the part in my bass line, and I'm all over the place. And out of nowhere, your father makes a huge error, makes a big noise on his guitar. And they said, Tommy, you okay? Yeah, let me just do it again. Let's start over. And they do it again. And he goes, I get to that same part, and your father makes another bigger mistake. And then he goes, I'm thinking, oh my God, thank God no one's hearing me. And my father, he says, your father turned to me and said, okay, now you're on your own.
I had heard that story.
And it
Wow.
came, and I never heard that story until Chuck told it to me.
Yeah.
And I filmed it. And it made me so proud, more than anything, of his ever playing, because he knew he could take that hit.
Right.
He knew he's not going to get fired,
Right.
but he knows what a mistake like that could be for the young guy that's in town, you know. And then the same thing happened with Chuck. He says that another gig with your father, he goes, Michel Legrand is in town doing, it might have been Summer 42. I can't remember what it was. And he said, he's calling out bass player, or key. I can't remember what they called it, like number one bass player. And he kept calling out the guy's name. Well, that bass player was Ray Brown, you know, one of the greatest bass players of all time.
Yeah. Ella Fitzgerald and everybody.
Yeah. I mean, he's like the god of jazz bass. But he kept saying it with a demeaning tone. And my father, during the break, my father walked past the conductor where Michel Legrand is there. And he's a couple feet up, you know, so above everybody
On the podium, right.
on the podium. And he pulled on the guy's, you know, pants, said, hey, the guy's got a name. It's Ray Brown. And that's it. He walked away. And when they came back, Michel Legrand apologized to Ray and the musicians. And again, those are the stories that just blow my mind. And the last one I'll tell you is the music story I heard from, oh God, I can't remember his name, percussion player out of, he's in Nashville now. He said one day we doing a Warner Brothers gig, you know, movie, and there's a part where it's just no music. The guy's got no music to put up there. He goes, guys, why don't you take a break? Tommy, can you just hang back and do me a favor? Just watch the picture, see if you could do something with this. Sure. And your father doesn't think about it, just turns his chair, watches, and the guy lets it go. And everybody's on break, and he starts playing against the picture. No music. He's just watching what's there. And the guy goes, oh my God. And he hits the button, says, Tommy, that was great. I am so sorry we had a technical difficulty, which he did. He goes to the engineer's assistant. He goes, go get all those guys and get them back in here. They got to see this. Because what he saw was this artistry that you get to a certain level. There's a handful of these people that can do what they do at a different on a level that we could only dreamed of. And that's what my dad was the most proud of, being able to be hired by John Williams or James Horner or Mancini or Goldsmith, and them holding a session. Say, Tommy, can you be in 2 months? We got a thing called it was the River, or it was Conrack for John Williams. Can you hold off the booking anything the first 2 weeks until we figure out the schedule? Yeah, he knows he's only one or two people. It's only going to be him or Dennis Budemer at that point in the studios that could do that, or you know, now John Goo and stuff. But at that time, it's very seldom. They want Tommy. They don't want the guitar, and that is the greatest joy as a person, as an artist, to be wanted, because you know all that other shit he did in the '60s, you know, the rock and roll stuff, or you know, or Batman or Green Acres or, you know, Three's Company. There's 20 guys that could do that.
Yeah.
You know, but now you're getting called for what you're special in.
And who you are.
And who you are.
As a person.
Yeah, as a person.
I can't even tell you. I have so many notes from this show. I'm just okay. So boss holes. That's those people at work that Terry was talking about. We call them boss holes. Because you can say that in public. The list of people who have ADHD or some other thing: Solange Knowles, Beyonce's sister, Justin Timberlake has been diagnosed, Britney Spears, Adam Levine, Will I Am, Ozzy Osbourne, no surprise there, Mel B from the Spice Girls, and I have a really dear friend, Daryl Duncan, who is a phenomenal musician, worked with Earth, Wind, and Fire when he was starting off years ago, and he has dyslexia. And it's
Wow.
such that when he writes a song, he can't remember it again. Like he has to record it because he can't recall it again once he's finished with it.
Hmm.
And he was telling me one day, it's just a horrible thing. And I said, that's part of your gift.
Mm.
And he was like, what are
Wow.
you talking about? I said, that's how God clears your brain so that you can go to create the next thing without the other stuff still being stuck in your head. And so I really
Mm.
think like your daughter and your gift. And I'm like now curious to know, if you think about it, did your dad have any of those tendencies?
Yeah. Oh,
See,
dad had, yeah.
yeah,
It's
because I
funny you
think
said
that
that
was part of
because,
his gift.
well, it's funny you said that. Yes, he had, we realized afterwards.
Hmm.
Yeah, he did. He had OCD. He had some OCD things,
Hmm.
tennis, which worked in his benefit.
Oh my God, totally part of his gift. It's his
Yeah.
gift ability.
Yeah. And, it's funny because, he also, I think one of the things, we talked about his reading was like he was probably one of the great
Ever.
ever
Yeah,
guitar
that one of
players.
the greatest sight readers or
Wow.
readers, but could sight read anything.
Yeah. And a lot of that brain, whatever's going on, if he wasn't going to be a musician, he would have been an accountant. He loved accounting. He loved gambling. So
Yeah.
you could see all those numbers. All those numbers. We also said I think he wanted to be a postman too because he waited for that guy to come. He couldn't wait to see the postman at the end. That's your highlight when you're retired. What mail's coming in? But he seriously was. He could see patterns. I think that's
Hmm.
why he could figure out when he was learning how to read. And Terry might know this in the 50s when he was trying to yeah, there's no music to be written. Music is you got to buy it.
Right.
So he's basically turning music upside down to learn it.
Hmm.
So if it's a standard, God bless the child, whatever the standard is, you just turn it upside down as a new piece of music and read it that
And practice reading that.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, I think he had a lot of tendencies that we didn't know.
Yeah.
And also your
Unfortunately,
dad.
it didn't work again, and it didn't work for me though.
Oh, it did work for you. You two moved. Yeah, it worked for you. You may
Yeah.
not see it, but
Um,
fortunately, the rest of us get to see it.
That's true. It really is fortunate for us. And I'm laughing picturing one of the highlights of your dad's retirement waiting for the mailman to come.
oh my
There was
God.
pretty good reason for that also because he was getting royalty
Cha-ching.
checks for all of
Yeah.
the
That was me,
incredible.
Terry. Yeah, I did it for the mailman too.
My mom accused him of having an affair with the postman.
We call that and Lisa knows because Lisa has acted in films and as well. We call it mailbox money,
Yeah, yeah. I'd be
residuals,
making
which
cupcakes for your dad's mailman.
Yeah, it's so funny. You
that's
brought that up.
so
I can't.
fantastic.
Yeah, forgot about all that.
Yeah. Great memories.
Yeah.
And and that speaks also to the real beauty of the Wrecking Crew movie because the story is so much more because you inserted yourself into it. Because it's about this. It's about the love. As a matter of fact, you told me the other day when we were talking that when your dad and you would fight about
Yeah.
things, or three boys in your family and everything, tell everybody how every fight ended before your dad would go to work.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it wasn't usually three boys. It was just usually me and him. It was never. Uh, we were too stubborn, as my grandmother would call us, testadure, I think it was in Italian, stubborn heads or whatever. Um, it's weird because he could also um, know your buttons,
Yeah.
which was not a great trait, by the way.
Hmm.
He could he could push my button, and it's like, why are you pushing my button? You know that's going to piss me off. And that sometimes we would do that and push each other's buttons, and it was our own frustrations, whatever it was. But at the end of a fight, and no matter how heated it got, if I was leaving, he said, "Come on, give me a kiss goodbye." And that was always we always, whether don't leave without kissing your mother or father goodbye, and that meant a lot. It's funny because I don't think that came from their era. Do you know what I mean? That's a different era.
Right.
That
I
wasn't
think
how
it's
they were
I
raised.
think your dad, from the stories that you told, and I was going to ask you and I know this would be so hard for Denny to answer. One of your dad's amazing traits that you have adopted, but I'm just going to answer for you. I think that's his caring. I think that was just part of his
I
nature, where he got it from
he,
a family member, his mom or somebody. But just the
yeah.
stories that you shared with us, he really looked out for people.
No, and you know what? I always said that if my father taught me anything, it wasn't about music. He taught me the common sense and also to be good to people.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to work, I love my crew.
Right.
I love, there's nothing better the other day I do have this other job I was telling Terry about.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Hanging with Dr. Z. And Hanging with Dr. Z started in COVID. I'm the comedian Dana Gould, who I've known for about 24 years now. Um, he loves Dr. Zayas from the Planet of the Apes.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID, we had nothing to do, and he said, "Why don't we do the talk show? Basically, it's Fernwood Tonight meets Merv Griffin, and we shot it on stage, green screen. It was just Dana in a heavy makeup, like Dr. Zayas, Dr. Z, we call him." And then we would get some of the great comedians, Will Forte, Bobcat, Patton Oswalt, Tim Meadows, whoever was around.
Mindy Sterling also,
Yeah,
who's
Mindy
been on our
Sterling the
show
other
here.
night. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we did this and we started this show. It's on YouTube. And it's literally all improv. And it's like it was like a crew of four of
Mm-hmm.
us. And we just kept everybody away from each other. It was all COVID safe. The artists weren't even in the room. They were in the next room over. And we connect them and we go crazy having fun. And the other day we did live at the Dynasty Typewriter Theater with Dana, Tim Foley, Mindy Sterling, Puddles the Pity Clown, who I had no idea who that was until I met him. Hilarious. Paul Greenberg, Jackie Harris, two of my friends. I had the best time. There's no money at all, but I had the best time I've had in weeks, months. And it's about that. It's about having fun. And if I could just have fun, I'd rather have fun and not get paid and not have to worry about pay would be better. But there is something, it's like you guys finishing an album and going, boy, that was good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a finish to something. And I think that's the greatest joy is if you, even Wrecking Crew people might say, oh, that was a hard thing. I remember the good times.
Right.
So I just love it. So
right. And the joy factor outweighs the bankruptcy factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really at the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
When you're looking back on your life as you continue to get older, that's going to continue. I know that it's going to continue to be something that you'll always be glad that you did and proud of.
I do. And if you would have asked me in 2014, I might not have, who knows?
Yeah.
But the weirdest thing was I had seen the joy the film brought. Again, I'm not saying it's because of me. It was just the music and those guys in that.
And their friendships.
Mm-hmm. And their friendships. And I saw audiences in tears. And it was because everybody relates to those stories themselves.
Yeah.
People were in tears because they just lost a parent or they're losing a parent or they're losing, whatever it is. And that was the greatest joy. So I knew the film was okay. I knew we never had a problem with the film. It was never like, oh, when it gets released, will it do well? I'd already seen it do well.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the road for 4 years. Like I said, I'd play schools, synagogues, churches. It didn't matter where I play it. I think I told you about finding my greatest joy in marketing when you had all these songs, like who's going to do this song? I hope someone picks up "Be My Baby." Well, that someone gave $1,000 instantly for that one.
Yeah,
he gave a great dedication. But then I thought, oh, everybody loves a clown, the Gary Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I thought no one's gonna do this one, and I thought I'm going to call a clown school. And I called the LA Clown School and pitched them the idea, and the guy had, I'm in. No one's ever pitched that idea. Wow. And it was the greatest joy for me is to get $1,000 from a clown school. so it's like, that's all I want to do is if the film's playing well, and that's where Immediate Family is doing really well. It's won 4 awards.
Yeah.
It's done extremely well. The guys are killing it. And I just need everybody now out there, if you're listening or tell people, please sign up on those website and the Facebook page, because analytics mean something to buyers. You
They
think,
do. And by the way, the hashtag is at immediate family film. We're on
is that what
all
it
of the tags for Instagram,
is?
all the socials.
Yeah, and the
So go there.
outtakes, and that's the other thing. I've been able to do outtakes. You know,
Hmm.
all those interviews I do that never get seen, I just cut an outtake out for it, and I'll find a sponsor, and they could sponsor an outtake, and
Hmm.
that's what I've been doing. I found a great bus company. They're sponsoring screening Pioneer Coach in Nashville. Um, so we're going to Nashville to do a screening for them.
It's so smart.
Well,
And it gives people a personal sense of connection with your movie.
yeah, I mean,
And the companies that
yeah.
are putting their money where their mouth is and where their heart is in wanting to brand their company with your film.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Some of the great, the sponsors like the Sessions. I don't know if you know Jules Follett and that group,
Hmm.
Jules and Dom. I mean, they were one of the big sponsors for us. They came on, God bless them. And you know, there's if it wasn't for the people that just spread the word and sponsor us, we'd never get these films out.
Yeah.
You know,
And by the way, what you're asking, uh, I ask of our audience as well all the time, and I'll second that with you. That if you like what you hear, if you like what you see, just go to all of our socials and follow us, subscribe. It doesn't cost money, it doesn't cost time, and it helps propel the continuation of these creative projects that are so important for everybody, for the people who are making, creating the art, telling the stories, for the people who are in the stories, and for the people who get to hear and experience the stories and enrich their lives in some way. That goes for Denny Tedesco. That goes for Dr. Lisa Summerhour, who's joining our conversation right now. Go check out her podcast on Fireside. Go to my Spotify page. And by the way, go to the Spotify page and the YouTube channels of everybody in the immediate family.
yeah.
Leland Sklar puts out his daily videos. They're just fantastic. Everybody's creating magnificent music and
It never
films and
stopped,
content.
there was something I want to say to everybody. If I don't know who's out there still, but one of the things that I tell the audiences, and it's hard because the younger audiences, it's funny when you go to a college and speak, it's a whole different thing than all of us that are of an age that appreciate not so much the music but the life stories.
Right.
They don't understand the life stories yet. But I tell them, I said, and you don't have to be of any age. You have an iPhone. If your parents are alive, your grandparents are alive, or someone that you love and don't want to let them leave without saying something, interview them. You don't have to make a doc. Just, I wish I had my grandfather's voice or my grandmother's voice. We'll never have that because none of us, we didn't have sound until 1979 on videos. VHS machines. So imagine being able to do that and to be able to pass it to your kids or their kids. And I just think everybody's got a story to tell.
Yes.
And, and you don't have to be an artist. You could be a mom. You could be a dad. You could be the guy next door. Someone's got a story to tell.
Even a parent can interview their young child.
Absolutely.
Think of how priceless that's going to be when they're an adult.
You can embarrass them at graduation.
Absolutely, Lisa. Thank you very much. And I have done that many of times. And I came across a memo of my daughter singing her heart out when she was 8, all making up a song. And it was hilariously horrific.
And she's 25 now, right? I think.
24 now, yeah.
24. Has she seen that lately? Does she still hate you? Or does she appreciate it?
She loves it. We played it to her the other day. So it was on my memo. It was on my memos. It was like,
it's so great.
Funny. One of my nieces turned 38, I think. And I went through all of the my mother had those old they weren't even VHS, those camcorder tapes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I put an entire video together of her with my dad, who was like her best friend,
Mhm.
and her riding her bike. It's got to be 2 hours. And the problem is, I haven't been able to edit it because there's some kind of glitch in the video. So I'm still trying to figure it out. But we actually saved all of that stuff, and I'm gonna work on it. But I want to get back to his film, Immediate Family, because I want everybody to know how many awards this film has already won.
Mhm.
Like, this isn't just like because he's such a cool guy, even though he is such a cool guy.
Well, thank you.
It's the best music film for Boulder Film Festival, the Sedona Film Festival, the Nashville Film Festival, Tall Grass Film Festival, audience winner, the official, it's Coronado Island, an audience award from Woodstock's Film Festival. I mean, this film is amazing, and I'm sure there are other ones out there, but there are films like this that if we don't support them, and go to the website and go to the Facebook, all of those things where Facebook is tracking that algorithm, and watch the film, and then put that on your Facebook page and tell your friends this weekend, sit down and watch a really good film that your kids can actually watch.
Well, I'm going to be in Orlando on the 16th and 20th, and Leland's going to be with me in Orlando at the film festival on the 20th.
Fantastic.
If anybody knows any musicians in Tampa, Orlando, please send them out. And then we're in the Docklands in San Rafael coming up in May, and then in Berkshire, Massachusetts, and Edmonton, Canada. And I don't know, but something came across while we were talking. I think in Maui, but I don't want to get too excited. I don't want to get too excited. I haven't checked the text. I was very kind. I saw it come across my text on my phone. I thought, oh, I hope so, because I could do that.
Well, Dr. Lisa and I volunteered to come be guest moderators of that panel.
There you go. Merchandise or something.
There you go.
I could totally make myself available for the hat sales table.
We'll just talk later then, Lisa.
Okay, that's cool. T-shirt, socks. I can do the sock table. I'm pretty flexible.
So, and by the way, Denny, if people go to immediatefamilyfilm.com, they can find the listings of the film festivals that you're appearing.
See the trailer, see
upcoming
the listings, and then they'll see, like I said, the outtakes. There's some funny.
Some of the best.
Like Waddy. There's a great song he was playing the Andrew Gold. He's coming off the Andrew Gold solo. Lonely Boy, and he's hot. In the studios, and he goes. And I walk into this liquor store to buy a pack of cigarettes, and it's playing in the store. And he goes, and I reach into my pocket to get some money to buy a pack of cigarettes. I got nothing on me. He goes, and I almost was the chump to say, hey, that's me. He just walked out.
That's great.
He cracks me up. Jonesing for that cigarette a little bit harder. He would have done it.
Exactly. If you were jonesing like I would have, I would have used that.
I want to wrap it up with my 3 closing questions. I could do this all day with the two of you, and we can always do this again once the movie gets released.
Cool.
And come on back. My first question, and I ask these of all of my guests, of 3 is, since this show's called Making It, what does making it mean to you both personally and professionally?
Go ahead, Lise.
The question's for you.
Oh, for me?
Danny. Yeah.
Oh.
Nice, Danny.
I already know Lisa's answer on that.
Oh. I think being secure enough. It's funny because it's it's such timing of this, because I'm 62. The business has changed. I don't know what I have another film we're starting about Wolfman Jack.
Nice.
And the other thing, and Hanging with Dr. Z and all these things. But, I still have it in me, and I still have it, do I have a career in it? I don't, I feeling comfortable. I know I've made it with my friends and family, but I want to be not comfortable. I'm not meaning in wealth, but being comfortable where I don't have to worry about, college or, which is coming up, and thinking about, oh boy, I saw I'm very lucky. My father, I hate to say this, it sounds awful. My father passed away very young at 67.
Yeah.
So he didn't have to suffer dementia and all that. That would have really been a bad thing for him because he was always very sharp in the head.
Right.
And my mom died at, like I said, at 85, and she was able to die at home. And I think making it would be just leaving this earth knowing I was with my family at home. You know, maybe it's a little dark, but I think
well, I don't see it as dark. I see it as one of the most profoundly beautiful answers in the 7 years of asking that question. It's a great example of making it.
Yeah.
I'm so with you on that. Can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
Don't be a dick.
That would be 1, 2, and 3. What are 4 and 5? That's great. Don't be a dick.
I think also is don't leave any stone unturned is I know it's cliche, but it's true. I will, if I'm trying to figure out how to publicize something, I will keep thinking outside the box. I know that's another cliche, but there's no rules. The rules are broken now because, and learn technology. I struggle. Terry saw this. Chris, or Lisa, you should have seen this. It was yesterday with poor Terry had to deal with me trying to get Fire Chat going. And it was brutal. I was like, oh my God. And learning the social media, not that you need to use it all the time, but understand what you're doing. And I think just meeting people, my dad always said you could be the greatest guitar player, but if you're playing at home, it doesn't mean anything. You got to get out there.
Right.
And luck, and he left me with those 4 things. The greatest thing he taught me and he always told his students was there are 4 things why you take a job. 1 is a connection. 2, it's learning. 3, it's fun. And 4, for money. And, if it's not one of those 4, if you're not connecting or having fun or learning something or making money, don't do it. And every time I do sometimes it's like, well, why did you, there's no money in that. I don't care. I'm meeting people. I'm having fun, and that's the greatest joy for me. So I think you just don't give up.
Right.
I love your dad.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
Lisa, one thing that you can find also, I think you can still find these, Denny. As a guitar player, I lived for your dad's monthly column in Guitar Player magazine. And he would tell stories. There'd be a joke in there. There'd be a profound life lesson. And the amount of money he got paid for the session.
That came out of in those days when in the late 70s, 78, he started that. Guitar Player magazine came to us and said, would you be interested in doing an article on studio play? And he said, yeah, but only if I could do it my way. He goes, I can't write articles. I'm not a teacher. And they said, yeah, no. And so he wrote what every question is ever asked of him. What do you bring to work? How much money do you make? Blah, 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 blah. And so he started doing as he would go, whatever job was, it could be, Gilligan's Island, or whatever, maybe probably later than that. But a movie could be with Temple of Doom, Raiders of the Lost Ark, whatever. And he'd take the music, if it was a good, interesting piece to write about, he'd take the music, put it in his pocket. Yeah, obviously, he asked John Williams or whoever the conductor was, and he'd go and he'd write it or put him at home. And it was the one consistent. My parents fought for my whole life. This was the fight, the monthly fight that you knew was going to be consistent, because he would wait to the last minute to do his homework and come up with an article. He'd look at the music for what he pulled out for the last month from the sessions, go, yeah, we'll write about this one. And he'd start, my mom with the IBM typewriter going, tick, 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 with the the whiteout. And he would start it, date, da-da-da. And he would go on through, he'd give him everything. And then he started the first sentence, there I was, da-da-da-da-da. And she'd go, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And he'd go, no, let's start again. And she'd get pissed. And he'd rip it out. and it would always be the most hilarious fight. And at the end, he'd struggle through it, piece of paper, he'd mail it to Guitar Player magazine. And he'd go, it was pretty good, huh, hon?
They were great. I highly encourage everybody
And we're going to do
to go check these out.
That's my other project, is re-release his autobiography, and we're sticking a bunch of those in there.
Oh, that's great.
With the new articles, I'm going to do QR codes with all the interviews of people that told, like Chuck Rainey.
Yeah.
That's what I'm working on now.
Is that from his book, Confessions of a Guitar Player?
No, it never came. No, it never came. That's the one I'm going to re-release.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So hang tight on that.
I actually, I need to leave because I've got a session coming up pretty quickly. But my closing question is, at this point of your life, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, man. Seriously, I would say learn as much as possible. Learn. Don't, and try to, you don't have to be an expert at something, but just learn. It's funny how typewriting, you can learn how to type, which is another story. I got out of typing because I hated it, because the priest would pound my hands if you looked at the keys. And I convinced him to let me join band. Right. And because my dad was a musician, and they said, all right. And but I learned how to type. And that was one of the greatest things, I was able to do. Learn a trade, learn something, and just enough to get by. But yeah, I would have learned computers. Listen, I know my computer.
Yeah.
My brother Damon, he's a mixer. He knows Pro Tools. He knows all that stuff. He's 7 years younger than me. He's not afraid of it. I was afraid of editing. Now I can edit, but I still get confused. But by the way, I left typing class, joined band, and I was the banner carrier. The best banner carrier you'll ever see.
Of course you were. Of course you were the best.
They didn't let me play an instrument.
Well, I would say, Denny, so far so good. Hold your course, because the work that you're putting out and the family that you've created of your own is just magnificent. I know that your folks, I'm sure they were proud of you and would continue to be.
I appreciate that.
And I'm just I'm a happy recipient of these wonderful documentaries that you make about the business that I love so much and that I've dedicated my life to. So thank you for the great work that you're doing.
And thank you for one of the most outstanding interviews I've had to do in many, many years.
Thank you. That means a lot to me, because I know you've done quite a few. And
fun. It's fun. I don't mind.
Exactly. Well,
I love sharing.
Yeah, I do as well. Well, you're a magnificent guest. I want to thank Dr. Lisa. Thank you for joining us today. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show again. Denny Tedesco, thank you.
Thank you.
To our live audience and to everybody watching and listening to the archive, we really appreciate you. And I encourage you to stay safe and stay inspired. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Denny, thank you so much. Lisa, thank you so much.
Bye, Lisa. Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Take great care.
Bye.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Wollman.